We give you our best 3 bets for week 4 of college football, and it all starts right now. Hey guys, it's Matt from GrandstandBettors.com, and we're back with our college football week 4 plays for you. Before we get into that, just real quick, make sure you hit that subscribe button for all our free picks, predictions, and contests throughout the year. And while you're at it, smash that like button if you are ready for some great top 25 matchups. I know we are. So, without further ado, let's dive in to week 4, and let's start things off with number 5, Clemson versus number 21, Wake Forest, in the 12 p.m. Eastern time slot. Clemson, they're a 7.5-point favorite. The over-under of this one is set at 55.5 at the moment. And Clemson, they have started off the season 3-0, beating Georgia Tech, Furman, and Louisiana Tech pretty easily. Quarterback DJ Uiagalelei has had a much better season so far this year, throwing for 662 yards and 5 touchdowns through their first 3 games. Wide receiver Collins has been his favorite target, hauling in 9 receptions and 3 touchdowns, going for 158 total yards. Now, along with Antonio Williams and Joseph Nada, who also have both over 100 receiving yards, Clemson has a solid wide receiver core that has given defenses all they can handle thus far in the season. Now, in addition to their passing attack, the Tigers also boast a very good rushing attack. They have a 2-pronged attack behind running back Will Shipley, who is averaging 7.8 yards per carry. And DJ also, his ability to extend the pocket with his legs and run into the open field is the second prong of that rushing attack. That offense together, they're putting up 425 yards total and 41.3 points per game. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Tigers have yet again put together a very solid defensive unit, which has been the heart of this team for the last few seasons. Linebacker Trenton Simpson leads the team with 19 tackles, and the secondary has already forced 5 interceptions. Now, the biggest strength of their defense, though, is certainly their run defense with guys like KJ Henry and big man DeMonte Capehart up front. They have only given up 69 rushing yards per game this season, which is ranked 8th in college football. So, good luck, Wake Forest. But Wake Forest has also started the season 3-0. Not without a scare, though, last week after beating VMI in the season opener and then Vanderbilt in week 2. They only beat Liberty by 1 point last week thanks to a big stop on a 2-point conversion in that game. Now, like Clemson, the Demon Deacons have put up very similar numbers offensively so far. Through 3 games, they're averaging 434 yards per game and 42 points per game. What they do have is a slight edge offensively in their passing attack. Quarterbacks Sam Hartman and Mitch Griffiths have combined for 913 passing yards and 10 touchdowns, while they also have 3 receivers all over 12 receptions and 139 receiving yards. Although their run game has not put up those numbers that Clemson has, they also have a very strong rushing attack led by Christian Turner and Justice Ellison. These two, they're averaging a combined 4.2 yards per carry. Now, Wake does a very good job moving that ball down the field, and combined with their defense, it makes sense why this team is 3-0 at this point in the season. Their secondary only giving up 199 passing yards per game, which is ranked 39th in college football, and they have only given up 122 rushing yards per game. Along with a front 7 that has generated 9 sacks and consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks, it is going to be a very good test for this Clemson offense. So, what is our best bet in this first top 25 matchup we're looking at? Well, although both of these offenses have looked good this season, none of them have looked dominant. They also have very good parts of their defense like Clemson's front 7 and Wake's secondary, which is going to make this more of a defensive battle in our opinion. Combined, they're only giving up 37.7 points per game. In addition, 6 out of the last 8 games these two have played have hit the under. So guess where we're going? In the first pick of week number 4, we're going to take Clemson, Georgia Tech, under 55.5 points. Now, let's look at another top 25 matchup this week. We have number 20, Florida, taking on number 11, Tennessee, in the 3:30 Eastern time slot. Tennessee here, a 10.5-point favorite, and the over-under at the moment set at 62.5. The Florida Gators, they had an insane start to the season, upsetting number 7, Utah, at home, 29-26, off the last-minute interception in the end zone. But the following two games have not been great. They proceeded to lose to Kentucky 26-16 at home, and in the next weekend they just narrowly defeated USF 31-28 last Saturday. Really, the only thing that has kept them in games is quarterback Anthony Richardson's playmaking ability. At 6'4", 232, it's hard to bring this guy down in the open field, and he is very quick at getting out of the pocket. He has 134 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the season, but their passing game has struggled. Richardson has not thrown a single touchdown pass through their first 3 games, and they only have one receiver with over 100 receiving yards on the season, and in total, only 423 receiving yards through 3 games. As you can tell, their main part of this offense for Florida is their rushing attack, so they're going to try and need to get that passing attack going if they want to win this game. On the defensive side of the ball, though, the Gators have extremely proficient secondary help there, only giving up 178 yards per game. Where they are struggling, though, is stopping the run, with the exception of the game against Kentucky, where they held the Wildcats to only 70 yards rushing. They have given up 230 yards to Utah and 286 to South Florida. If they can't establish some sort of presence on the defensive line in this matchup, Tennessee is going to tear them apart. Speaking of Tennessee, they are ranked 11th in the country with dominant wins over Akron, Ball State, and an overtime thriller against Pitt a couple weeks back. Unlike Florida, they have a very balanced attack on offense. They have 102 pass plays and 131 run plays on the season so far, and quarterback Hendon Hooker, 844 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, and still has not thrown an interception on the season. With wideouts like Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman, who both have over 200 receiving yards, they're going to be a handful for that Florida secondary. Their rushing attack also going to be a problem with Jalen Wright. He has 231 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on only 45 attempts this season. Now, these offenses, they put up 52 points per game, but what about their defenses? Well, the run defense is giving up 83 rushing yards per game, which is 20th in college football. Their secondary, it struggled a bit, giving up 261 yards per game, but that number is a little bit skewed because of how much their opponents have had to throw the ball since they've been playing catch-up for the majority of games. With solid playmakers on both sides of the ball, Tennessee is a team to watch out for this season. But what about this weekend against Florida? Who should you be betting on? Well, Tennessee by far has the most talented roster that Florida has faced this season. With how good the Volunteers' run defense is and the Florida offense relying so much on the part of their running game to stay alive in games, it's tough to see them stay with Tennessee in this one. Tennessee also is averaging 27 points more per game than Florida and holding their opponents to 12 less points. We really think that people are really still high on this Florida team winning week 1 against Utah, but let's be honest, they have some issues passing the ball and stopping opposing rushing attacks. Tennessee really should have no problem winning this one at home. So with our second best bet of week number 4, we're going to take Tennessee minus 10.5 over Florida. Now, before we get to our third and final best bet of week number 4, just a reminder that if you want our full card of college or NFL, head on over to grandstandbettors.com and become part of our family. But as we mentioned, we do have one more best bet for you here in week 4 of college football, and it's yet another top 25 matchup between the number 10 Arkansas Razorbacks and the number 23 Texas A&M Aggies. Texas A&M actually a 2.5-point favorite here. The over-under set at 48.5. Arkansas Razorbacks, they got off to a great start this season. They're 3-0, defeating the likes of Cincinnati, South Carolina, and Missouri State. In those games, they're averaging 500 yards offensively and 37 points per game. quarterback KJ Jefferson has looked great so far, throwing at a 70% completion rate, a 6-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and a 176.3 QB rating. Now, their run game has also basically been unstoppable behind Sanders. He already has 440 rushing yards and is averaging 6.7 yards per carry. As long as this guy keeps putting up those numbers, it's going to be hard for any team to contain this offense, let alone Sanders, the way they control the pace of the game. Defensively, though, the Razorbacks, they've struggled a little bit in the red zone, but the bigger issue is their pass defense. They're giving up 353 passing yards per game, which is contributing to opposing offenses putting up 27 points per game against them. If they get things squared away on that part of the defense, they're going to have one of the best defensive units in all of college football with the way that their run defense is performing. They're only giving up 68.3 rushing yards per game, which is 6th best in the nation. Meanwhile, though, the Texas A&M Aggies, 2-1 so far on the season, had a nice bounce-back win last week against Miami after a tough loss in Week 2 to Appalachian State. Now, in their win last week, though, they only put up 17 points, and they're only averaging 20.7 points per game on the season. The biggest reason for this is the lack of their inconsistency at quarterback with Haynes King, who was replaced with Max Johnson last week, and their lack of a rushing attack. As a team, they only have 317 rushing yards this season, which Sanders alone with Arkansas has more than. We will most likely see Max Johnson. It's our opinion that he's going to start again, and it's a little hard to get a read on this guy after 1 week, especially against Miami there. He only threw for 163 yards and had a 54% completion percentage. Despite, though, the poor performances offensively, the Aggies only won their game last week because of their defense. They only gave up 9 points to Miami, and they're only giving up 8.7 points per game on the season. This defense, led by guys like defensive back Antonio Johnson, linebacker Chris Russell Jr., and other hard-hitting linemen, make it very hard for offenses to move the ball down the field. The only issue we really see with their defense is they can't force turnovers or sacks. They only have 4 sacks on the season and only 1 interception. Yes, they forced a lot of punts so far, but their opponents are getting harder and harder, and that's not going to last. They're going to need to put pressure on the quarterbacks to force turnovers to make a bigger impact in those games. So, what's our best bet here in this primetime matchup? Well, Texas A&M is only averaging 313 yards per game, which is almost 200 less than Arkansas. Arkansas's run game and passing attacks are much better than the Aggies. In addition, although the Razorbacks have a weak secondary, the Aggies have really struggled a lot throwing the ball. And with Arkansas's front seven controlling the game, it's going to be tough for the Aggies to match offensive output of Arkansas in this one. So, with our third top 25 best bet of the weekend, we're going to take Arkansas here on the money line at plus 104. Well, guys, that does it here for us at Grandstand Bettors. As always, we want you to sit back, relax, enjoy Week 4 of college football, and we'll see you right back here, same time, same place, next week.